It's June 20th, 2021, and I would like to wish everyone a happy Father's Day across the land. And also, for the first time in our nation's history, happy Juneteenth holiday. We'll discuss, what does this mean for our country? How far have African Americans actually come? And what is this Independence Day all about? But first, we'll have a conversation with a father who unfortunately lost his son, but decided to turn tragedy into triumph with the Donovan Lynch Foundation. You're listening to State of the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be back after this commercial break. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Eric Claville, and you're listening to State of the Water. I'd like to wish all the fathers out there across the land a happy Father's Day. I'm telling you that this is one of the greatest titles that I think any man could hold, and I thank God for my two sons and my wife who welcomed me and gave me great gifts. And on this day, and this Father's Day is your day. So for all the fathers out there, take a bow, take it easy. This is your day. And we'll talk about the importance of Father's Day in our second hour. Also, for the first time in our nation's history, happy Juneteenth holiday. That's right. Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. I tell you, this change of 2020, we've seen a lot of highs. We've seen a lot of lows, but we also are seeing a lot of highs as well. But we'll talk about in the second half hour the importance of Juneteenth. What actually is it? What is the meaning behind it? And what can we do in our time period in order to continue the tradition but continue to rise above? But now, I would like to welcome to our radio program a father who's also an alum of Norfolk State University who unfortunately lost his son in a tragedy here in Virginia Beach. But decided to turn tragedy into triumph. Welcome, Mr. Wayne Lynch. Welcome to State of the Water.
Thank you, Dr. for having me. I really appreciate all your time and effort in helping me honor my son. And my family really appreciate you, Dr. Adam Gaskin, for having us in Norfolk State. And I'm really proud to be on that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have other members of the Lynch family who's also joining us on this call as well. I mentioned that you're a father that lost your son, and you decided to turn tragedy into triumph. And we're going to get into that, turning tragedy into triumph. But, today we honor all fathers across the country. And because of your son, Donovan Lynch, who unfortunately about less than 3 months ago, lost his life down at the beachfront in Virginia Beach in an officer-involved shooting. And, of course, we're all saddened by not just your son, but all individuals that are involved in these unfortunate events that continue to happen over and over and over again to our community. But this is a day that we want to honor you. We all want to honor the memory of Donovan. And we also want to talk about, the foundation that you started. But first, Mr. Lynch, I want you to talk first about, who Donovan Lynch was to you. Introduce him to the rest of our audience. Mr. Lynch. We're going to get him back here on the air. But Mr. Lynch is joining us by phone, and on the campus of Norfolk State University, we were the host site for the HBCU tour, the kickoff to the HBCU kickoff for the Donovan Lynch Foundation, and we had a phenomenal kickoff to it, absolutely great discussion about the issues that are happening behind it. Right, the phone's ringing. We're having a great we had a phenomenal discussion about the issues and all the issues around where the case is and the like. But one of the things that we wanted to do during that time period, and we're going to get Mr. Lynch back on the air in just a moment, but I wanted to introduce Donovan Lynch to all of us as not just a victim of a tragedy, but I wanted to introduce him as who he was, the son, to the father. So, Mr. Lynch, are you there?
Yes, I'm back.
Wonderful.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Again, as I stated earlier, we were the host site for the symposium of Reimagining America, where we had an opportunity to host the HBCU kickoff tour for the Donovan Lynch Foundation, where you wanted to turn tragedy into triumph. And we had a discussion about all the issues surrounding this tragedy, but
yes,
also
sir, I'm back with you right now.
Okay. But also our community. But I didn't want the world to know Donovan as this tragedy, but I wanted the world to know who he was as your son and the person. Tell us who Donovan Lynch was to you. Yes, Mr. Lynch, tell us who Donovan was to you. Hello? All right. We're going to get him back on the air in just a moment, but we're going to continue to talk about this particular case here. And Mr. Lynch, he's going to join us in just a moment. We're just having a few difficulties here, technical difficulties, and it does happen. It does happen. But this particular idea behind pushing the narrative about change. And I'm so happy for this family and what they're doing with this tragedy. What they're doing with this tragedy is that they're not using it to just sit on. They're not using it to say, woe is me. And again, no man, no woman, no family should have to endure what they've endured. But what they decided to do is what's called Reimagine America. Reimagine America. And you can go to their website at dwlfoundation.com. That's dwlfoundation.com. And you can go there. And we had a phenomenal discussion here on the campus. Reverend Barbara from the People's Party, the People's Movement, the Poor People's Campaign joined us. And we know who he is and all the work that he's done. But we also had other members, from the Lynch family to join us. And do we have Mr. Lynch on the air? Mr. Lynch, are you there? Mr. Lynch, are you there? Okay. Mr. Lynch, could you tell us about Donovan? Who was Donovan to you? Again, we're just having a little difficulty getting Mr. Lynch on the air. So, but I want you to go to, that you can go to the website, take a look.
Yes, I am back again.
Okay.
Having some technical difficulties.
Okay, wonderful. Can you tell us who Donovan Lynch was to our audience?
Donovan was an outstanding young man. He was the most influential person in our family. He was the go-to guy. He always had a kind word, always had words of wisdom for his younger cousins and his sister. Donovan was always available to assist. He was a caring, loving person. And he also was a Christian man. So Donovan checked all the boxes that a father would want in a son.
I remember on Thursday, when I asked you that question because I wanted you to introduce Donovan to us because I didn't want him to be, just the picture that we saw on the news, and when you started talking about him, I saw that smile come on your face, all your pearly whites were showing, and it looks as if, just from where I was sitting, where I was standing next to you, that everything that you just said, he was the light in the room. It shows that his life meant more than what happened in Virginia Beach. Now, when we talk about what took place, Mr. Lynch, tell us about, when you got that phone call and what you know so far. And as we talk about, again, we talk about the tragedy that took place in Virginia Beach. Unfortunately, Mr. Lynch's son was involved.
Yes.
In that, in an officer-involved shooting. Mr. Lynch, tell us what we know so far and what you found out when you got that phone call. What was going on?
It was unbelievable. I thought maybe they were mistaken, but I had several of his friends call me and told me the same thing, so I knew it was pretty serious. But I knew my son had nothing to do with anything that involved any shooting or anything down at the oceanfront. He was an innocent bystander making his way to his vehicle like every other person was that was not involved in that.
Yes, sir. And I know that we
need transparency.
Absolutely. What do we know so far? I mean, this has been almost 3 months, and it seems like it's disappeared from the news cycle.
We haven't had any updates at all to the family or to the public from the city of Virginia Beach or the state of Virginia. So we're still waiting on that as well.
Wow. So no updates. It's disappeared from the news cycle, and you're still waiting. And we can only imagine, what you're going through as a father. We can only imagine what your family's going through while you're waiting on more answers. And I know that you are represented, and I talked about, so I don't want you to delve into the case too much because you are attorney represented and the family is for this particular issue. But again, I don't want to focus so much on the tragedy, but I want to focus on the triumph. So out of this tragedy, you decided to create the Donovan Lynch Foundation. Tell us about that foundation. The Donovan Lynch Foundation that you created, it's something that you wanted to reimagine America about. You wanted to reimagine how America deals with these very important issues, these very hard issues. And I mentioned earlier that we were the host site here at the university for that symposium. And that symposium included Reverend Barbara, who actually imparted, again, tons of wisdom upon us, like he usually does, in fighting for, the issues of the people. We know that, your family member, Mr. Pharrell Williams, had planned to join us by Zoom, but wasn't able to at the time. But we know he's been involved in asking a lot of questions and being involved and also supporting, this very, very important issue. And, I'll just take this moment to say about Mr. Pharrell how, we know that artists, they come from our area, they come from various areas, and they leave and they go, of course, where the industry is, where they are. But he is one that's never forgotten about where he came from. He's one that's wanted to come back and make a difference in his community. So I take my hat off to him and all that's happening. But also with that, we had, of course, you, your brother Tim, and your other brother from North Carolina that attended, that actually did the sign language for us and interpretation. And you also had your attorney with you as well. And then we had former delegate and former gubernatorial candidate, Jennifer Carroll Foy, who talked about how to make changes in public policy, how to take these changes that that we see from the ground and move it up. And then we also had former candidate Cameron Beltran, who's also a gunshot victim, who decided to turn his tragedy into triumph, and is really on the ground pushing. And we had scholars here from NSU, and we also were able to have visitors all the way from Kentucky that are working with the Breonna Taylor's case, activism out there. We had local activists in attendance, and we had several news stations that actually covered it, WVEC and WTKR. You can go to their website and you could take a look at the Facebook page stream, or you could take a look at the DWL Foundation website, which is the Donovan Wayne Lynch Foundation. Mr. Lynch, are you still there with us? Mr. Lynch, are you still there with us?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what's the expectation of the foundation? What do you want to see out of it?
The primary expectation of the foundation is to start a dialogue with regular people in communities to try to come up with some solutions that we think can help rectify some of the ills that we're having in our community. So we want to get people talking. We want to start the dialogue of how we can change things.
Absolutely.
And the foundation is a catalyst for that as well. We also want to bring awareness to the issues that are affecting our community, and not only awareness but solutions. So we're offering resources for ideas to help rectify some of the things that we see in the community.
That's right.
To need improvement. Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, part of that, at the kickoff of this HBCU tour, we actually engaged in you and the foundation asked for ideas, from people in the audience, and not just ideas. I mean, you just to give them, but you're also going to partner with them, and you also gave out cash. You're giving out cash awards, $500 per idea, up to 5 ideas, so $2,500 total, $500 per idea. Can you tell us about some of those ideas that you've read so far or you heard on Thursday?
Well, there were several great ideas. We haven't went through all of them as of yet, but we should be making an announcement by Wednesday. But they were thought-provoking, they were necessary, they were interesting as well, and they were really good. So we're still doing the analysis on those, and we're having announcement Wednesday this week.
Yes, sir. And I know Reverend Barber actually did the eulogy for your son. And as I stated before, he actually imparted, just a lot of wisdom and on us in the time that he was with us. What do you think about the words that he spoke and how you can use that to further the foundation?
It's a coalition. We have to have a coalition of people, not just one group or one or two groups. We have to have people with like mind, like interest, and that want to see a change. And Reverend Barber is spot on with that. His organization, the Prayers of the Priest and the For People's Campaign, incorporates everyone into the movement. So that's what we're initiating as well.
Absolutely. Now, this was just the very first piece. This was the very first gathering. I don't want to call it a program. This was a movement, not a meeting. This was the very first one. What is the next step, and what is the next event that you're looking to plan, or the foundation looking to go from here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as we had the very first symposium here in Norfolk State, what's the next stop? What's the next stop for the foundation, for the HBCU tour?
I didn't hear the question. What was the question again?
Yeah. So what's the next stop for the HBCU tour?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, we're in the planning stages right now, and we're kind of looking at a few options. Everything's still in the early stages, but like I said, we want to thank you guys for having the launch and kickoff right there at the Green and Gold.
Absolutely.
And we're in the planning stage. I'd like to also just thank my brother Tim, who's my project manager, for all his hard work and effort in putting this together.
Absolutely. And I actually work with Tim in helping to moderate the symposium. And again, I'm just you have a phenomenal family that's
thank you, sir.
Purpose driven, and that's keyed in and ready to see this thing through, not just for now, but moving forward for the long haul.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that as well.
We're coming to the end of our conversation, but there are a couple of things I want to cover very quickly with you.
All right.
Donovan's Law. What is Donovan's Law, and what's the reason behind it?
Okay. Well, the General Assembly just passed a law this past year, October 2020, that has a civilian review board component that provides oversight to law enforcement. Also allows for subpoena power and to make sure that records are released, documents are released in a timely fashion. It's House Bill 5055 and Senate Bill 5035, which is the Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board. What we want to do, like I said, is on the books, but there's a caveat. It's an option for cities to enact the law. But what we want to do is proposing a law that will make it mandatory for civilian review boards in cities of 135 citizens or more, 135,000 citizens or more. So we're diligently working on that. Jennifer's been diligently working on that as well, and we hope we can get a resolution soon.
Absolutely. Taking tragedy to triumph. And, you know,
under law, mandatory civilian review boards.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, as we close, Mr. Lynch, I just want to say I was moved by the words of your brother as he articulated the last conversation that he had with your son. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but your brother Tim said that the last conversation he had with Donovan said, Uncle, I just don't want to be successful, but I want to change the world.
Yes. That was his mantra. He wanted to change the world. He saw, firsthand how I went out in my community each and every day for the past 35 years or more and worked with everyone, trying to make people's lives better. And that's the legacy that we have. We want to help people improve their lives.
Absolutely. And look, you're doing that right now. You're doing it. And let me tell you,
sir.
Again, we were honored to have you on campus. We were honored that you asked us to be the host site for this very first symposium and the kickoff to what is going to be not just a moment, but a movement, taking tragedy to triumph and making sure that Donovan Wayne Lynch's life changes the world. I want to tell our listeners they can go to dwlfoundation.org. That's dwlfoundation.org for Donovan Wayne Lynch. That's where you can find more information about the foundation. If you want to help, if you want to offer whatever you can offer, you can go to there. And this is the Foundation for Social and Economic Justice in the memory of Wayne Lynch's son, Donovan Wayne Lynch. Mr. Lynch, I'll let you have the last word.
Once again, I just want to thank you, Dr. Bell, for all your hard work and effort in helping us launch this initiative. I want to thank the university as well for their effort in helping launch this initiative. And we're looking forward to how we can collaborate and work together to make this a reality, that no other African-American men or women will be shot and killed by the police. Absolutely.
Mr. Lynch, again, no one can know what you're going through about the loss, but I tip my hat to you for what you're doing in the memory of your son, and it's going to make a difference. It's already making a difference. Yes, sir. Listen, God bless. Happy Father's Day, and thank you so much for joining us on State of the Water.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, again, if you want to learn more about the Donovan Lynch Foundation, you can go to dwlfoundation.org. That's dwlfoundation.org. If you want to see some moments or clips from the symposium, you can go to WTKR.com, and you can also go to their Facebook page, and it's located there. Just put in Donovan Lynch in the web search for WTKR.com. You can also see clips from WNSB on our Facebook page as we streamed it. So there are several resources you can go, WNSBonline.org, that's WNSBonline.org, or at WNSB online. You can go to our social media and find it where we were streaming and we were there, and where I moderated again with Reverend Barbara and Jennifer Carroll Foy, and also an expert, former police chief, who also, the former police chief Miller, who also helped us to break down the issues surrounding it, and also NSU scholar Dr. Kumalafe, and also Cameron Bertrand, who's a gunshot victim, former candidate for school board here on the peninsula here in Hampton Roads. And again, it was just an engaging conversation about this very important issue in our community. And as Mr. Lynch said, he said, we want to make sure that no other family goes through this. We want to make sure that his life is going to change the world. So Donovan's Law is now based upon Virginia House Bill 5035. Senate House Bill 5035, and also House Bill 5035, where now we're looking at law enforcement civil oversight bodies. So basically, if you take a look at Senate Bill 5035 and the identical bill in the House is House Bill 5055, you'll see where civil review boards or oversight boards are an option for cities and localities to create where there are police, local police departments, not sheriff's departments. Now, what's the importance of that? What's the importance of that? This is where the details make a difference in public policy. In Virginia Senate Bill 5035, and House Bill 5055, where there are cities that have local police, they have the option to create civil review boards or oversight boards, civilian. But where there are cities or communities without local police, but have sheriff's departments, there is no law that says that they have to create a civil oversight board or have the option or even consider. They don't have to consider it at all. Why is that important? Most of the Commonwealth of Virginia is rural. Think about Windsor County. All right. Think about those areas where we saw very high profile cases. No civil review board, civilian review board, or oversight boards are needed by law. Now, they could have them if they want them, but that takes a local, effort. But who's going to do that if they don't have to do it? And then even in cities such as Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Richmond, and all others, all cities that have local police, they have the option of doing it. So it takes a local effort, a local push to do it. Now, civil review boards or oversight boards with civilians on it, that's an issue that is going to be debated, whether they're effective or not. But we've seen where you have a community that is employing through tax dollars individuals in their community in order to offer law enforcement services to protect and serve their community, there is merit to it. But again, how does it work? These are where the details come in. This is where the community plays a monumental part in understanding how civil review boards work and what do you want out of it. Keep in mind that this is your community. Your voice should be heard. And if your voice is heard, then from there, we understand what you need. What are these things that are happening? We can talk about it in meetings. We can talk about it in Richmond. We can talk about it in various offices of stakeholders. But if we don't come to you or if you don't come to us and let us know, then we simply won't know. So this is our opportunity, our time to hear from you. What are your thoughts about civil review boards, oversight committees? We want to hear exactly how you feel, because this is the only way that we're going to understand the issues moving forward. So again, we'd like to thank the Lynch family, Mr. Wayne Lynch, for coming in and for talking about it. I know it's heavy on his heart with it being Father's Day, but we're excited that he was able to come on. Now, in our second half hour, we're going to talk about Juneteenth, because for the first time in our nation's history, I can say Happy Juneteenth. And is recognized by the federal government, which means that all federal offices, state offices, local, and some private are actually closed. What does this day mean for us as a country? What does this day mean for us as African Americans? What does this day mean for our society moving forward in understanding the struggles and the triumphs of African Americans as we continue to teach the whole history of our country? And then finally, I like to give a tribute to all fathers on Father's Day to talk about the importance of fathers, the importance of being in not just the household, but being in the lives of our children. As I like to call it, and the scripture calls it, the glory of our children. We'll see you back after this commercial break.
Norfolk State University proudly congratulates the graduating classes of 2020 and 2021. You did it. You persevered. You kept the faith, and you crossed the finish line. Despite the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, you overcame insurmountable odds. Please know that Spartans everywhere are immensely proud of your achievements. Behold the green and gold. Support for WNSB provided by Rugged Evolution Beard Care, featured in Essence Magazine. Rugged Evolution Beard Care, offering 16 scented balms and oils, shampoos, accessories, including leave-in beard conditioner for all men hair types and facial styles. Rugged Evolution's complete product line and information is available at www.ruggedevo.com. Rugged Evolution Beard Care, www.ruggedevo.com. Rugged is the new smooth. Rugged Evolution wishes you a happy Father's Day.
Welcome back to Stay in the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and I'd like to wish every father out there a happy Father's Day across the land. That's right. This is your day. This is your time to be recognized as you hold one of the greatest titles any man can hold. I'm telling you, I like to thank my wife and our two sons, Ian and Ethan, for making me a father, because I care so deeply about that title, and thank God for the ability in order to be a father in this society. But also, in the second half hour, I would like to talk to you about Juneteenth. What does this mean for our nation? Because for the first time in our country, I can say Happy Juneteenth holiday. Now, we know as African Americans, we've celebrated this from various communities. But what does this mean for our society as a whole? What does this mean for us moving forward? Let's delve and take a closer look in it. So, Juneteenth, what does it mean? Let us know what you think about this subject. Call us at 757-823-9110. That's 757-823-9110. Now, Juneteenth, we know that this past week, President Joe Biden signed into law recognizing June 19th as Juneteenth holiday. Now, if you're African American and that you grew up around Texas, or even if you grew up in the former Confederate or traditional South, you know what Juneteenth is. And also Black community across the country, whether it be Illinois and Chicago, whether it be Detroit, whether it be areas up in Seattle, Washington, or Tacoma, if it be California and the like, you know about Juneteenth. But most of the country, and when I say most of the country, a lot of African Americans who did not grow up in those areas, that don't hold those traditions true, that live in suburban communities, that grew up, not with the traditions of African American culture, a lot of white Americans, and of course, a lot of other non-white or non-Black Americans, Asian Americans, East Indian Americans, and so forth. They don't know, and immigrants, about Juneteenth. So what is the importance of Juneteenth? Now, I did a conversation for Newport News. The city of Newport News has sponsored Juneteenth week. A lot of it was headed up by City Councilwoman Sandra Cherry, and I was fortunate enough to be asked to do a conversation about Juneteenth. And of course, with that time period, we had a conversation with Nathan Richardson, who is Frederick Douglass, and he's toured all across this area. Those of you that attend African American events, you see Frederick Douglass, and and he's traveled all and up and down the East Coast. So everyone knows who Nathan Richardson is. And we had a phenomenal conversation, both that aired on Newport News television station. You can go to Newport News TV YouTube channel and see that. And you can also see the live recording. We actually did it live at the Denby Community Center there in Newport News as well. And we had an opportunity to have a conversation about Juneteenth, because this is our time to really show, just African-American culture is just not something that was created by people that was downtrodden or people that didn't know any better or anything like that. Because as African-Americans, I've said it on this show, I said in my lectures and writings, there's nothing more American than being African-American. Because as African-Americans, we came here with our ingenuity, our innovation. We built this country with our blood, with our sweat, with our tears, with our generations, with our families, and we gave our free labor and still give our love and our dedication to our country, not this country, but our country, even though it doesn't give it back to us. That's the true spirit of being an American. We fight for the country. We defend our country. We built our country. Because without our labor, America would not be America. But to back that statement up, it's all in our history books. And it's time to start peeling back that history and taking a look at it. And I believe that recognizing Juneteenth is the start of that opportunity to start peeling back those layers and showing to the world who we are, what we've done, what we've contributed, and how valuable the African-American experience is to America. Because, as I say, there's nothing more American than being African-American. So let's take a look at Juneteenth. And I'm looking at various sources, but for the most part, I'm talking about, basic knowledge that I've researched and read about Juneteenth. Now, we know that Juneteenth is celebrating the African-American community on the 19th of June. And now it's an official holiday. June 19th, every year from here on out, will be a federal holiday. Now, we call it Emancipation Day, or some call it Juneteenth Independence Day. Now, we know that the Emancipation Proclamation was actually signed in 1863, January 1st. Now, keep in mind, the night before January 1st, 1863, African Americans, those who were enslaved at the time, were holding watch night services, watching for that time period where January 1st came in. And for our traditions, that's where we get watch night services in our African American churches and the like. But waiting for that clock to strike where freedom would ring. The Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery and emancipated those formerly enslaved blacks and made them now free. So there are no more slaves. Of course, we know that the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment abolished slavery, made African formerly enslaved citizens, and then also provided the right to vote to black males. We know that the women got the right to vote with the 19th Amendment, what's called women's suffrage, 1920. Signed during that time period, we just celebrated or commemorated 100 years of women's suffrage. Now, with that, this holiday commemorates the end of slavery in the United States. June 19, 1865. That's almost 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, 1863. So why 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation are we celebrating the end of slavery in the United States? The reason why we celebrate 2.5 years of the end of slavery, as opposed to the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, that date, is because all blacks were not free at the signing. It took 2.5 years for the word to get to the westernmost state at that time period that had slaves, and that was the state of Texas. The state of Texas. Now, the state of Texas knew about, now some records do show in history, and there's been some conclusions drawn from this, but we're not going to draw conclusions today. But of course, every state knew what was taking place during that time period of Civil War. But if you have the power to keep your people from hearing certain messages, from hearing certain laws, from hearing certain information, then you can keep them ignorant or not knowing, and then thereby they become enslaved. So physically and intellectually keeping that information from the slaves in Texas, because if the slaves became free, that means the plantations didn't have any free labor. Who was going to till the land? Who was going to pick the crops? Who was going to ensure that the plantation continued to make money for the plantation owner? See the importance of African Americans? See the importance of our lives in America? Now, over 3 million were slaves declared free with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation in the Confederate South. But Texas said, nope, we're going to hold up. So it wasn't until Major General Gordon Granger, who read General Order, I think it's number 3, in Galveston, Texas, on June 19, 1865, which basically stated in part that all enslaved are now declared free. All enslaved in Texas are now declared free. He went there with Union soldiers, Major General Gordon Granger. He read the General Order number 3, that now all slaves are declared free. That ended slavery across the country once that happened. Now you can imagine what took place. Immediately, celebration with prayer, eating, song, dance, jubilee. Think about it. At one point you were a slave, and by the reading of one general order from the President of the United States, you're now free. You can only imagine the celebration that took place. So from the first observance of that very first day of June 19th, 1865, every year after that, African Americans in various states and communities have celebrated Juneteenth. As a matter of fact, on Facebook, of course, we all have friends on Facebook, and I'm looking at different photos, and someone put up a clip of where they were won the Juneteenth pageant, back home, and you forget about a lot of these things because your kids, you're going through it, your parents put you in these pageants and stuff like that, and your botillions, your cotillions, the debutantes, and the things of that nature. But it's not until you go back and take a look at those photos and say, wow, I was a part of making that history. I was a part of celebrating that time period. But to me, it means more now as we're older. And it means more now where our country is. It's amazing. When we take a look at the change, when we take a look at the things that are happening throughout our society as it relates to Black people and the plight of African Americans and Black people in our country through learning the history. Now, just last month, we talked about commemorating, and again, I don't like celebrating, but commemorating and recognizing the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Race Riot. One of the worst documented events of atrocities on our soil upon African Americans by white Americans. One of them. There have been many, but one. As a matter of fact, there were many of those type of race riots where African-American communities were destroyed. African-Americans were killed without evidence, without due process, on lies. As we go back and take a look at the legal documents and the history. And it was all out of jealousy and hatred. That was the key to it. And what ended up happening is that we're going to see a lot of these communities, not just Tulsa 1921, but even after Tulsa and right before Tulsa. We're coming up in 2023 where we're going to commemorate 100 years of Rosewood. And for those you don't know about Rosewood, there's been a very similar to what took place in Tulsa, but smaller town in Florida. There was a dramatization of it created. Ving Rhames is a star in that movie. Don Cheadle, I believe, is also in that movie. But take a look at it. But these are time periods that was withheld from us. The history of those time periods was withheld from us and withheld from society. But now we have an opportunity. It's coming to light because the things that we've talked about in our community, scandalous about things that we're going through. Now the history is being told. And listen, the history is being told because unless you tell the full story, then you don't know the story. You just know a snippet. As America, we've been looking at America through the lens of a snippet. And the snippet through the eyes of the South, the former Confederate, because the Daughters of the Confederacy, when you look at the influence on our history and our history books and who helped to write and dictate history about that time period in our country, it was the Daughters of the Confederate. Very quiet movement, but very powerful movement. Again, some of the most powerful movements are not created by the bullet, but they're created by the pen. I'll say that again. Some of the most powerful movements were not created by the bullet, they're created by the pen. Because he who's able to write the history, it becomes his story. When we talk about his story or history, when we talk about mankind as a whole. So Juneteenth is now an opportunity for us to celebrate what took place in not just during the time of slavery, but also to celebrate the culture and achievements of our society, of African Americans. Now, I would like to note that Juneteenth also became a state holiday in 1980. And also some other states did follow suit in making a holiday. I know that, but recently several other states have followed suit and made Juneteenth an official holiday. So there's only one state now that doesn't recognize Juneteenth as a holiday, and I think that is North Dakota or South Dakota. But the importance of, well, actually South Dakota, because the importance of recognizing Juneteenth in that state is because the emancipator is there, carved into the side of a mountain. So what greater place to recognize Juneteenth than where we also honor the emancipator with his likeness on the side of a mountain on Mount Rushmore. So what did you do on Juneteenth? How did you celebrate? How did you recognize this time period? And what can we do in the future? Well, as I stated, some cities, such as the city of Newport News, started a week of programs in order to recognize Juneteenth. We know there was a big program at Fort Monroe that involved the governor, also the acting chief for the National Park Service, Chief Dans, Eola Dans. We also saw other guests who were there in attendance, many elected officials, many individuals who have been working with this effort on the community level for decades, years and decades. And how fitting that the person that's been pushing Juneteenth on the ground was also present with the signing with President Joe Biden in D.C. This is our moment. This is our time. That's what comes to mind to me when I saw the president of our university, President Adams Gaston, release a statement in June of 2020 about what took place, about with George Floyd and the social change. It was entitled, "This is Our Time." And it's true. This is our time. This is our moment to move forward, to move the narrative into a direction that's educational, move a narrative that is informative, and capture the narrative for ourselves. No more are we now subjected to the ideas of others, but we can take the destiny in our own hands. Tell your story. Your story is significant. As a matter of fact, the scripture tells you to tell your story. He said in Revelation that you overcome the devil by the word of your testimony and the blood of the Lamb. So your words makes you an overcomer. So happy Juneteenth holiday to everyone out there. And finally, in the last minutes of the show, I like to talk about and give a tribute to the importance of fathers. Now, I am a guest columnist and writer for The Voice, which is a local newspaper here in the city of Norfolk. You can go and take a look at the issues online, or you can pick them up in your local African-American establishments and businesses. But The Voice, you can go to voiceconnects.com. And for the June issue, I wrote an article in that particular newspaper about fathers and honoring fathers. But I talked about the importance of fathers, and it's entitled The Importance of Fathers. And this will appear in the June 2021 edition of The Voice. As we celebrate this Father's Day, I want to take the time to say thank you. Thank you to all the fathers for being the patriarch of our families. Thank you for being the solid rocks that your children, families, and communities depend upon. As we celebrate our fathers, I recognize that I'm blessed to be called a father. Psalms 127:3 tells us that, lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. It is one of the most important titles and responsibilities that I possess and cherish. It is one that causes me to think about my time with my children and appreciate every memory that we have created. Likewise, I reflect upon my natural father and how he raised my siblings and me. I think of the great times that we had as a family and the timeless memories that were created in the process. Whether it was the memories of our father taking us to church weekly and serving in leadership and ministry, taking us to school and participating in our school and extracurricular activities, or just being at home together. These are the moments that help to shape me as a man and a father today. My father, who is Wilford Claville Jr., had such an indelible effect upon my life that I have tried to emulate many of the lessons and skills he utilized with us to raise my sons. That's the power and the importance of a father's influence. During this celebration of fathers, I also reflect on the importance of having our fathers in our homes and community. Many studies show that having a father in a home makes significant difference in the stability of homes, stability in communities, and the success of children. Unfortunately, in many homes, single-parent households are on the rise. In the African-American community, this trend has increased over time due to the discriminatory policies that penalize families for having adult males in the home should welfare assistance be desired. Additionally, the discriminatory prison pipeline policies ensured that large numbers of men were removed from our communities, which translated to the marked absence of fathers from their homes. Ultimately, These policies, coupled with popular culture, have contributed to a proliferation of single-parent homes and absent fathers. Nevertheless, I do not believe that all is lost. I do believe that we can reverse this trend if we work together as a community. I believe that we should begin by educating our youth about the responsibility associated with being a father. Proverbs 17:6 tells us that children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are the fathers. When we remove the father from the lives of our children, we are removing their God-given glory. Moreover, we are removing the first example that they can see of a man in their lives. The presence of a father in the beginning and through the existence of our children's lives sets the example of what our future families and communities could and should be. Secondly, I believe that good mentorship is essential to ensuring successful fathership outcomes. Keep in mind, the presence of a father figure where actual fathers are absent may help to bridge a gap by providing mentoring and demonstrating exemplary behaviors. I also believe that positive public policy that promotes two-parent households in our communities is necessary. Again, many studies and real-life examples show that two-parent households are beneficial for the well-being of children, financial stability, society as a whole. But I also salute all single-parent households that have done the double duty and the hard work in raising successful families. I salute you as well. But with these 3 steps as a start, I believe that we can start to build stronger families and communities. Finally, I want to reiterate my appreciation for all of our fathers that have been constant and consistent. I celebrate fathers that understand how blessed they are to have the reward of children that the Almighty God has given them. I celebrate fathers that read to their children and help them with homework. I celebrate fathers that are there for families during the good times, the hard times, and yes, even the bad times. I celebrate fathers that get up every day to go to work to provide for their families. I celebrate fathers that provide instructions to their sons and daughters about life, love, and the basic tenets of being young gentlemen and young ladies. I celebrate fathers that comfort and cry with children during their accomplishments and their failures. I celebrate fathers that take time to listen and to encourage. I celebrate fathers that tell their children no when they need to hear it and yes when appropriate. I celebrate fathers that are just that, our fathers. Fathers all over, take this moment and take your bow as we celebrate you for being here for us on this very special day that we honor you on this Father's Day. As you can tell, I consider and I take my responsibility as being a father with such joy. It's not a chore, but it's a responsibility that God has given us. And it's a great responsibility because we are the glory of our children. Once again, we've run out of time. It seems like every time we get going with a great conversation, there's just not enough time in the day. But guess what? You can go back and listen to this episode and other episodes at wnsbonline.org. That's wnsbonline.org, and on our social media at wnsbonline, our YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and others. We want you to join us on next week, Sunday at 1 p.m. as we bring policymakers, movers, and shakers to you, the community, to discuss issues that are important in your lives. Once again, we thank you for joining us and taking out 1 hour of your Sunday. And now we give you back your day as we hope we've made a difference in your life. We'll see you next week.